Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com. I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. It's episode 378 of the podcast, and this is the second part of Don't Be a Lazy Fly Fisher. So last week I released Don't Be a Lazy Fly Fisher 1. This is Don't Be a Lazy Fly Fisher 2. And I got enough of a positive response to part 1 that instead of delaying part 2, we're going to release this one right now. And there might be a part 3. We'll see. Because there's plenty of ways that I know I am lazy when I go fly fishing. So I assume I'm not alone. But we'll dive right into it. But I'm going to kind of recap what I talked about last week in case you didn't listen to that one. These were the 3 things. I wouldn't say these are the top 3 ways that we can be lazy. But there are 3 things I think that you should avoid. One is don't be lazy about adjusting your leader. Putting the right amount of tippet on, the right diameter of tippet, thinking about how that leader and tippet setup is going to actually accentuate and help make your presentation. That's number 1. Number 2 is read the water. Don't be lazy when you get to the water and just do what you did last time. Talk a little bit more about that. And we'll actually discuss that a little bit here in one of today's topics. And then number 3 is gear maintenance. Take care of your stuff. There's no reason for a pair of waders to only last 1 year. There's no reason for rod tips to get broken when you're around your car. Those are totally avoidable. So that one's kind of a pet peeve of mine. People complain about like, oh man, my wader's dry wadded. Well, where'd you keep them? Wadded up in my garage. Well, that's what happens. Okay, so those were the 3 things I talked about on episode 377. Now in 378, we will start with don't be a lazy dry fly fisher. You say, wait a minute, that's an oxymoron. Being a dry fly fisher requires skill and tact and grace and elegance and patience and being a bit masochistic, right? No. What I mean is if you see trout rising to flies, don't be lazy and throw on that big, bushy dun, okay? Take some time. Figure out what's happening. I don't have numbers for it, and I'm sure if I would have taken some time to investigate, somebody has these somewhere. Probably one of the many books I have on my bookshelf, or just the wealth of information that I could Google. But more often than not, in my experience, when you see a fish breaking the surface or causing some sort of disturbance to the surface tension, it's not for a big, high-riding dry fly. That happens sometimes. Usually, that's going to happen when you see bugs flitting around and doing their number on the surface. But if you're not seeing a lot of activity in the air, but you are seeing rises, there's a good chance that it is not going to be that big upright wing pattern that you want to throw because that's the fly that you can see, and it's also probably going to be the fly that takes the longest to be submerged. So you probably know what I'm getting at. And that's that a lot of our quote-unquote dry fly fishing opportunities are actually emerger fishing opportunities. Now, there's options for this. There's plenty of flies that are tied in a style where the hackle splays out at an angle from the eye of the hook, and it suspends that hook point and the body of that fly and the tail underwater. And maybe even there's a parachute that you can see. And that's fine and good. And in fact, when there's big, bushy flies that are skittering the top of the surface of the water, I like to throw a fly that has some sort of subsurface presence. I think that it just covers your bases. Any fish that are on the edge about coming up and taking a fly will see that bug as a bug that's not going to get away. But usually, we don't have that luxury of being able to choose what style of surface pattern we throw. Usually, you have to actually have some discernment, take some time, watch what's happening. And this is where, again, it can be lazy. You say, I see something white in the water, I'm going to throw a white fly. All right, that's fantastic. You've narrowed it down to the color, but how is that insect riding on the water. This could be as easy as stepping out into the current and waiting for something to pass by you. Now, so many bugs are small, so many bugs are translucent, so many bugs are the color of water that you might need to have a little scene, if that's legal where you are, to actually grab that thing and look at it and say, okay, this is the size and shape, and within a certain degree of matching the color of that fly. More important than that is learning to read rise forms. Now, this topic could get a podcast episode unto itself because it is such an important part of fly fishing for trout. But I'd actually even say that this is applicable to smallmouth bass. This is applicable to panfish. I think to a certain degree, this is applicable to like chasing stripers with poppers. Understanding what you're seeing when you're seeing a fish disturb the surface tension of water. Because just because you're seeing ripples doesn't mean they're coming up fully mouth open to take that fly that, again, is floating on the tip top of that surface tension, the latest stage of that insect's life. And so watching, is a nose coming up? Is a full mouth coming up? Is it a splashy rise? Are you seeing the back fin? Are you seeing the tail of the fish? Is it just that the water is getting bumped up? Is there a little dimple? All of these things are going to give you wonderful clues as to where that fly lay in the surface tension of that water and what those fish are going to be going for. So thankfully, they're fish. And so all of that math and that I was just discussing, that flow chart of decision making that I was just going over, some of that is mitigated by the fact that they're just fish. And so they're going to see something in the water and they're going to probably bite at it because they have to be opportunistic, even in the most incredible heavy hatches. I mean, just anecdotally, I've been in hatches that are blizzard-like, and because I don't have the right fly, I just throw something that approximates the shape of that fly and the silhouette of that fly. And even though the colors are completely wrong, the fish will go bonkers for it. But I know times also where the fish are going to have lockjaw, and it seems like, we have to say it seems like, because I don't think there's empirical evidence that backs this up. It seems like they have a particular, number of ribs on that fly's body they're looking for, or a number of fibers that make up its tail that it's looking for. But generally speaking, you get the silhouette right, and you get where it sits on the surface or in the surface right, you're going to be okay. But that means taking some time, not being lazy, and just saying, well, the guy at the fly shop said they're hitting on size 18 blue wing olive, so I got my big old, upright wing blue wing olive. I'm going to check it out there, and man, it just seems like they're giving it, they're sniffing it, but they're not going after it. Well, maybe snip off those upright rings and trim that hackle off and let it ride in that current, or only grease up your leader. Don't grease up your fly itself, and let that thing be a little bit submerged, and you'll see some really, really cool results. So, number one, don't be lazy in your approach to fishing dry flies. All right, here's another one that if you've listened to me for any length of time, you know is on my list of priorities. Don't be lazy about your casting. Specifically, practice your casting. So I've got a bunch of articles that I started writing and never finished. And one of the ones that I feel bad that I didn't finish writing because it's such a good article. I think I didn't finish it because I really want to do it justice, and I never once I started it and stopped and put it away, I just didn't feel like I could do it justice. And so I feel bad because I interviewed some phenomenal saltwater fishing guides, folks that you guys would know, people that know their stuff in the salt, people I fished with that I truly respect their skill and their knowledge. And that's why I talked to them. And what I asked them was, what are some things that either trout anglers, when they come to fish with you, or just people who intermittently fish in the salt, they come to fish with you, what would you want them to know? And their first thing they said is they need to practice their casting. They need to practice their casting. They said, guys who can cast with great accuracy and distance with a 6-weight or a 5-weight, they have a leg up, but they are not ready to lay out 70 or 80 feet with a 9, 10, or 11 weight. They're two very, very different things. And how do you do that? Does that mean you go saltwater fishing to prepare for saltwater fishing? No, it means you practice your casting. You're never going to perfectly replicate the conditions in which you have a tailing bonefish at a certain low direction in front of you, and your guide says cast there now, and you're able to imitate that with the conditions, with your what you're perceiving with your eyes, with your heart rate, stuff like that. But to the best of your ability, you can get that muscle memory down so that if you own a rod that's similar to the rod you're going to be fishing or the same rod you're going to be fishing in those situations, that you can make those casts under ideal conditions. That will really significantly increase the likelihood of being able to make those casts in difficult situations also. But not being lazy with your cast doesn't limit itself to when you spend, $1,000 on a guide for the day in the Caribbean. This also matters for just getting better. If you want to reach more fish, practice your casting. If you want to reach more fish with a better presentation, practice your casting. I'm always so blown away with how poor we cast. And I don't mean to say this in any way to be dismissive, because I feel like I'm a really good fly caster, but there's some days where I'm not getting it, or I haven't used that rod in a while, or I'm being sloppy, or I'm being hurried, or I'm being lazy. And that's always going to happen if you let your skills lag. But the fact of the matter is that an elite athlete, which I'm not, but an elite athlete on a day when he's not giving it his all, still has enough muscle memory to make those shots, to make those passes, to run at that speed, to achieve those goals. And so for you and me, the more we practice casting, the better we are going to be when it comes time to actually perform out on the water. Now, what does this entail? Does this mean that you go to join a casting club? No. Does it mean that you necessarily pay somebody to show you how to cast? No. Both of those things are great. And again, I'm on the record of saying that your money you spend on having a guide help you with your casting as part of your day's trip is money well spent. And it'll make you a better angler the rest of that day and then moving forward. But it just means time out in the lawn. It means time at the bluegill pond. It means time actually casting in situations that you think you are going to have to perform in. A few podcasts ago was about casting inside, and I had some good feedback about that, and people that were like, at first I thought that was stupid, then I realized it actually would probably be a good idea, and I was like, well, that's kind of the premise of the whole thing. But the more you practice fly casting, the better you're going to be. And I would say the second part of that is just pay attention to your cast. Don't be on autopilot when you know that you have work to do. So you think about all the things that go into our mind when we are getting ready to make a presentation to a fish that we see. I mean, the complex algorithm in our brain that's simply keeping us upright in the moving water, let alone moving our arm and generating enough line speed and putting that fly at a certain length of tippet. All of those data points are bounced around in our head. It's okay to stop looking at that fish for a second and pay attention to your back cast. It's okay to stop paying attention to moving and get to a spot and then make your cast. Not taking some of those variables for granted as you make your cast. So that's my second thing to not be lazy in. So first, don't be lazy with presenting your dry flies and figuring out what they are. Second one is don't be lazy with your casting. Don't get to the point where you can make a 30-foot cast easily and then just say, I guess I'm good, I'm set, I've made it, I'll just figure out as I go. Actually be deliberate in figuring out how you can do those things. Okay, so number one is don't be lazy in picking the dry fly and figuring out the dry fly you need to fish. Number two is don't be lazy in your casting. Practice your casting. Just become adequate. It really is what it is with casting skill. And thirdly, don't be lazy with where you fish. Don't be lazy with where you fish. Now, this is one I have to tell myself all the time. Sitting here in the wintertime, this is being recorded in February, I just, daydream about starting off on new streams or going a little bit further than I've gone before or trying that place I've seen on the map or that I've driven past. And then inevitably what happens when the weather gets better is I just go back to my tried and true spots. And you have to think, well, how did I find that spot? How did I first locate that? Well, maybe somebody took me. Well, how did they find it? You have this infinite regression to, it's not that everyone just always fish that spot, that there's a particular spot that you like, but there's probably more spots that are like that. That was actually the crux of one of my presentations at the fly fishing show this year for backcountry fishing, which, backcountry for most people means just walking, from where the trail goes wide to narrow. It means walking a couple extra minutes, and the amount of opportunities that open themselves up to you are significant. If you just move a little bit further into the woods, a little bit further upstream, a little bit further past where the footpath gets a little bit more narrow. And so I would just say don't get lazy and fall into those routines. A lot of the guys that I know that catch a lot of fish and a lot of big fish, they are doing a lot of footwork and they are pushing past places where they or anyone else would assume that the good fishing would be. And you got to realize that, for every cast where you don't catch a fish in a spot where you think there should be fish, you could probably have a cast into a spot where you don't know there can be a fish or not, and the result is going to be probably the same. Again, you need to take data into account. Is this water capable of supporting trout? If trout are what you're going for, is this water capable of supporting bass? I mean, you don't want to cast into something that's 2 inches deep and covered in algae. I mean, unless you're fishing for bullfrogs. But at the same time, if there's a spot that's good fishing, and then that a couple hundred yards downstream, there's another spot that's good for fishing. Well, have you fished through that other water? Have you really probed to see if there's maybe a couple of good holding spots? And inevitably there are. I mean, these fish spread themselves out in areas like this because they have to deal with competition for food and they have to deal with all the other things that fish are, quote unquote, thinking about. They're looking for shelter and they're looking for food. And so, one time a year they're looking to make tails at other fish. So anyway, I would just say don't get lazy and fall into the same routine. If somebody asks you to go fishing with them, go fishing with them and see, where they fish and even ask them, how'd you get there? Why'd you get there? And really push past what is normal. And I always challenge myself with this every year. There's one year where I said, I'm going to fish a new water. Not a new stretch of water, but a new water, new creek, new pond, whatever, once a month for the entire season. And that was a really fun exercise because, for one, I caught fish. For two, it was a reminder that there's a lot more fish than the fish that I am intimately aware of. And so don't be lazy in picking where you are going to fish. All right, so there are 3 more things in this series of don't be a lazy fly fisher. So that's This has brought us to a grand total of 6 things in the last few episodes. I've got 3 more in mind, so who knows? Maybe next week will be part 3, or maybe we'll just push it off. But we're also drawing near to the time where I have my Accusations podcast, where I interact with questions, comments, and accusations from you, the reader, the listener, the YouTube viewer. If you have a question, send it to me at matthew@castingacross.com, matthew@castingacross.com, and if I do not answer it on the air, I will do my best to get back to you probably pretty quick with an answer via email. So always happy to get those questions. This week on Casting Across, Monday's article was 2026 show report, new fly rods. So this article that I did in 2025 got a ton of pop, all sorts of traffic, which is fantastic. I am not going to look sideways at that. But this year's also got a pretty good response in these last 3 days or whatever. But I talk about the fly rods that I cast that really just stood out to me in one way or another at the fly fishing show. So one of the things I do at the fly fishing show, and I probably should have an episode about that in the coming weeks, looking back on the 2 that I went to in 2026. But one of the things I like to do is look around for fly rods I've never cast before. So they could be new or they could be new to me. And this year I cast 2 rods that were new and one that was new to me that I thought were worth sharing. There's other awesome rods. I mean, I can't say enough about some of the rods I saw from Orvis and from Sage and from Douglas and from TNT and from some of the other labels. There's awesome fly rods, just great fly rods. But 3 that I thought kind of fit some fun niches are the ones I talk about in this article, 2026 show report. And so they come from 3 brands, one of them very established, Reddington, and then 2 smaller brands. One is Woof and one is Wicked Fly. And so I would encourage you to go to that article and check out what I have to say about those rods, then go click around on those websites and see what you could see. And maybe go find a local dealer and give them a cast yourself. One of these rods was a really snappy, at the same time delicate 3-weight. Another was a nice progressive 6-weight that reminds me of some of my rods that were built at a gentler time. And then one was a 7-weight that I think would be absolutely stellar for chasing trout on streamers, but more so because it was only 8 foot and 3 inches. An awesome kayak rod for chasing after panfish and bass with poppers and with gurglers and other surface patterns. So you can check out which of those is which of those at 2026 Show Report New Fly Rods. Wednesday's article was called Video, Spring Creek Essentials. So a book that I have tremendously enjoyed over the last almost 20 years is Mike Heck's Spring Creek Essentials. Mike Heck's Spring Creek Strategies. The article is called Spring Creek Essentials. The book is called Spring Creek Strategies. It's a Stackpole book put out in 2008. And it's an excellent resource for anybody who is fishing smaller spring creeks. So yes, the information would be helpful if you were in England. It would be helpful if you were in Montana. But in my humble opinion, it is must-read material if you fish in the Mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland. If you fish the driftless up in the Midwest, this kind of spring creek fishing, he does a fantastic job talking about bugs, talking about ecosystems, talking about fish, and most importantly, talking about just how we approach them. So can't say enough good things about Spring Creek Strategies by Mike Heck. This week's recommendation is so simple, you'd say, that's so simple. But that's okay. It is Loon Outdoors Double Barrel Caddy. Loon Outdoors Double Barrel Caddy. What does this little guy do? Well, I've fished with a lot of Loon floatant materials. I just think they work really well, and I like them. All right, but you can use whatever floatant materials and formulas that you want to use, and this is still going to work as long as the bottle is the right shape. So this little double barrel caddy is a silicone. It's double barreled, but they're 2 different diameters. And the cool thing about it is that it gives you exactly what you need, where you need it, how you need it. So my preferred tandem floatant situation is to have a liquid floatant, so like Loon's Aquel, for example, and then a desiccant. So Loon's is called Top Ride. But again, you buy them from whoever you want to buy them, right? But this floatant, because it is this double barrel shape with total pass-through on either side, you can put your floatant facing down and your desiccant facing up, which is what you want. And it's only $16. I'm sure they have it at your fly shop. Anyone who carries Loon Outdoors is going to have it. But it comes with its own little retainer that you can clip it onto a D-ring or onto a zipper pull or something like that. But it's great because having your floatant inverted makes it so that it's going to come out quickly and in a consistent manner all the time. And having your desiccant upright is going to make dropping a fly in it and shaking it around that much easier. So you could say, just throw it in my pocket and it's free. That's awesome. Or for $16, they can be right there, right where you need them, in the orientation that is going to make them the most effective, and you're not going to waste a whole bunch. So, in my opinion, it's worth $16. If you can figure out for yourself if it is for you, I will put a link for the silicone double barrel caddy from Loon Outdoors on this podcast show notes over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.